Right, hello, welcome to another Zoom group. Let's start off with a bit of meditation just to kind of connect with the communication that's going on, and try and include more of the behind the scenes communication that goes on, both for the people here in the group and for you if you're watching this video afterwards. So I'm going to make a few assumptions here, but I'm going to assume you're in a room somewhere. I'm going to assume you're on your own. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're more than one, but let's just say you're on your own. And you're watching this on some sort of device, whether it's a laptop or computer or tablet or phone or something like that. So that's one aspect of what's happening. And we're going to kind of, in the meditation, we're going to just explore a little bit what else is happening behind the scenes of that. And just for, just to give you a sort of mental image, this is the best I've got so far, okay? It's not brilliant. It's a little bit macabre. I don't mean it to be, but it's just all I can think of. So, you know the way, if you've ever seen a movie where there's a portrait in a room, and it's one of those portraits that the eyes, can be taken out from the back and somebody can look in and spy on the people in the room. So if you have that idea, or that mental image, and then you have a mental image of, all I can come up with, feel free to make suggestions if you can think of a better one. But all I can think of is, like a mummy, the sarcophagus that a mummy is in, the way the top part is sort of body shaped. So if you think of that, but sort of upright, and the eyes of that little mummy, the lid of the sarcophagus have got those little eye holes in it as well. So if you were standing in that, in the inside of that thing, you could look out through it. A bit like a mask, I suppose, like a full body mask. So I'll come back to that in a minute in the meditation. So if you just close your eyes, I don't like to get into a particular, a meditative position. I like to just close my eyes and see where I'm at, okay? And I encourage you to do that as well, because if you get into a meditative position, like if you sit up straight and I'm going to uncross my arms and uncross my legs, you kind of miss the opportunity to take a little snapshot of how you are when you're not being conscious of your body. That's the way it always seems to me. Because I'll think I'm sitting comfortably, and then I'll close my eyes, and then suddenly I'm like, oh my God, I'm so uncomfortable. I'm slouching, and this is a bit tight, and that's a bit tight. And bit by bit, I will readjust my position, my sitting position, I nearly always end up in what it would be considered a good meditative position. My spine will be much straighter. I will have uncrossed my arms and my legs. I will have dropped quite a bit of tension that I didn't realize I had anyway. But I just think it's a very good exercise, and it's a good way to begin in meditation of, as soon as I close my eyes, immediately beginning to become more conscious of how it is in my body. So I'd encourage you to do that as well. Anywhere you find tension, anything that feels uncomfortable, any way that you're sitting, take a couple of deep breaths. It's a couple of breaths, breathing in and out is a great way of highlighting tension. It's a bit like a wave washing up and down your body. And it sort of illuminates the different parts that you might be holding on to. So I'll just draw your attention to some areas that are common for holding tension. I mean, as a general rule, anything that's transverse in your body, so any structure that goes across your body rather than from your head to your feet, generally, has a much higher tendency to accumulate tension. I like to think of it as like a log or a branch going across a stream. It just collects the leaves and the twigs, and anything that's flowing down the stream just can gather there. So your eyes, have a look in your eyes, or put your attention in your eyes. There's quite a few muscles around your eyeball. So 6 altogether, sets for per each eye. 6 muscles to do with moving your eyeball around, and that's not counting the muscles for focusing inside your eyeball. So there can be a lot of tension in your eyes. And if you can't feel it, you can highlight it for yourself by either gently, moving your eyeballs around with your eyes closed, or gently just turning your head side to side. Because even though your eyes are closed, your eyeballs are still looking. So they'll move as you turn your head from side to side. And that may highlight some tension for you. And anyway, as you find tension, you just use your breath to let it go. And there's two, excuse me, there's two types of breath you can use. You can use your normal respiration. And when you're using your normal respiration, you can feel your diaphragm kind of drops and the air is kind of sucked in through your mouth. And so the air travels in through your mouth and down into your body. So you can use that. That's one kind of breathing to focus on and use to help release any kind of tension that you have. Or another, which personally I find more powerful, is your energetic breath. And that kind of comes in, if you think of your torso like a cylinder, so that breath comes in sort of through your genitals and travels up that cylinder. So it's not like air breathing, it's energy breathing. And it has a slightly more involuntary quality to it. So with the air breathing, you are consciously breathing in a way. You're kind of going, yep, okay, time to breathe in. Okay, my lungs are full and I'm going to breathe out again. With energetic breathing, it kind of works in tandem with your lung breathing. But if you breathe out and you wait, you'll feel the kind of energy coming in, and it sort of fills you a little bit like a glove puppet from your sort of, as I say, from your genitals or your base chakra, if you're into chakras, or just that kind of area. It kind of comes up and fills you that way. And that, when it goes out, when it breathes out, so to speak, is, I find that much more powerful for taking tension away. So you can use either of those, or you can use them together. They do kind of work together a little bit. So then if you put your attention on your tongue and the back of your throat, the part of you that you use for talking, there can be a lot of tension in that as well. Base of your neck, your shoulder girdle, your shoulders. Another kind of tip is, as you're letting go of tension, if you find something you just, you're breathing and it's not working, it's not really letting go. If you go into the tension a little bit more, so let's say it's your shoulders, if you feel like your shoulders are, they're just they're not letting go as much as you feel like they could, you can bunch them up, go into the tension, bunch it up, and then let them drop. And often that kind of breaks it, and they'll release more. Similarly, like if it's your eyes, if you just can't get it, if you scrunch up your eyes and let them relax. Or any structure, most structures you can do that with. Some very deep internal structures, it's hard to do that with, but just generally, it's not a bad tip. And down into your heart area. depending on how you are, it can be hard to get a sense of your heart area. But there are a lot of vortexes happening in your heart, energetic fluid vortexes. And if you can't get a sense of your heart, what one way you can begin to is to have a sense of your heart space expanding. If you just kind of think about it expanding. If you know your anatomy and physiology, you can think about your pericardium relaxing. That's the bag your heart sits into, and becoming easier. There's a lot of tension in the heart area can be in the pericardium more than the actual heart itself. The heart itself doesn't really have it doesn't really have the luxury of holding tension. It's too busy. And then on down to your respiratory diaphragm. It's the place we can tuck a lot of things under. Your respiratory diaphragm looks a little bit like an upside down hammock. And when you think of it like that, you know that it's arching up underneath. You can see how we could be tucking things in under there. Now, the same again, like anywhere you find tension, you just let it go. You could spend a lot of time in your intestines, but just go with the biggest. If you find something, you know, if you, as you're sort of scanning that area, have a look for where the biggest tension is and just work on that. I mean, if you're meditating on your own, you could spend a lot of time there. And on down into your pelvic floor. Can be a lot of tension there as well. And now if you bring your attention to your hands and the sensation in your hands. See if you can notice the difference between the sensation in the front of your hands, your palms of your hands, and the back of your hands. And similarly, this is something you could go into and spend a lot of time on your own when you're meditating, but just for the purpose of this, just see if you can notice the difference in sensation between the front of your hands and the back of your hands. That subtle tingling just inside your skin. So try and get a good reference for that. And now if you sort of bring to mind that image I was talking about earlier on of this kind of sarcophagus with the eye holes in it, that if you think of your body a little bit like that, like a jelly mold that you're pulling, that's a much friendlier image, isn't it? A jelly mold that you're pulling back from. So you've closed the peepholes that you were looking through when you closed your eyes, and now you're sort of pulling back into inner space a bit, the inner space inside your body. And you could think of your body a little bit like the TARDIS in Doctor Who, where it's much bigger on the inside than it looks from the outside. You keep going back, pulling back. The room is still there. You're still in the room, but you're also holding a deeper inner space now at the same time. And again, if you're doing this on your own, you can spend a lot of time doing this and allowing the shape of your body to letting go of the shape of your body and just going with the sensation. And what will or can happen is the sensation of different parts of your body can start to move around. So your feet may not stay down where they were. The sensation, you may sort of register them up higher. Where you sort of feel like your head is, that may sort of descend to be more sort of in your chest or not. It can just, all sorts of different things can happen. But for now, just keep with the sensation in your hands and what that feels like. And then if you like, just to help you with this, you can put your hands out on either side of you as if you're reaching out to touch someone on either side. And see if you can notice a different sensation. Because what you're going to do is connect with, we'll start off with me, because that's easier with me to start off with. So see if you can get a sense of the sensation in your hands and then something slightly different, something familiar, but different. That'll be me. And if you're watching the video, you can still do this, okay? Because inside an inner space, time, it works kind of differently. So even if you're watching this, you can still connect with me. And then see if you can connect with the other people in the group who are here. This is the communication that's gone on behind the scenes. So when we started off, we had the communication through the devices. This is the other communication that's going on. And similarly, if you're watching the video, you'll be able to connect with everyone who's in the group. Because time and space, they operate differently in inner space. And for the people in the group, you too can connect with everyone who is going to watch the video. I know that sounds weird, but it is possible inside. And similarly, if you're watching the video, you can connect with everyone who watched the video before you and everyone who's going to watch the video. Time operates differently here. And the thing to get really here is that often you'll hear people talk about profound realizations that they've had where they say, oh, it was so beautiful. I realized I wasn't alone, that we're all one. We're all connected. I looked at a robin and me and the robin were one, or I looked at a tree and the tree and I were one. We're all one. Well, where that feeling and where that knowledge comes from is here, is out, behind the scenes in this inner space. That's where you connect with, where you get a sense of the connection, where you get a sense of how we are all connected. And the lovely thing is that there's always people to connect with behind the scenes like this. There's always friendly people to connect with. Okay, so in the same way, I don't like to, get into a special kind of position when I'm getting ready for meditation. I also like to not come back from anywhere. I like to just open my eyes and hold the inner space and the outer space all at the same time. Now, depending, if you're watching the video and you're new to meditation, that might be hard, and that's fine. So if you feel like you've traveled very deeply and you want to have time to come back, then that's fine. But something to kind of work towards is being able to just open your eyes when you feel like you've been very deeply inside, that you open your eyes and you can still kind of go, I'm still connected. I'm still there. Even though I'm open my eyes, I can still see my phone or my device or whatever it is I'm watching this thing on. And I can, you can kind of close your eyes and check in again. Oh yeah, it's still there. Open your eyes, still there. Yeah, I'm still connected to all those people as well, So you can hold the inner space and the outer space at the same time. Okay. All right. So somebody sent me in this question. They said, is it possible to love someone without getting attached to them? If we are attached, is it really love? Nice, simple
Good question.
Pardon?
Good question. Sounds like it's coming maybe from a yogi.
Yeah, it is a good question. And unfortunately, there's no like simple answer. Well, like most things really, isn't it? There's no simple answer to it because like in a loving relationship, like because of Hollywood and because of TV, our ideas of love are very influenced by a lot of that stuff. And I think a lot of the, a lot of difficulties can arise from ideas of like the one. I mean, that's a terrible idea. Is he or she the one? I mean, that's so many people like get into trouble with that kind of idea. And like when you think about it, like what are we at? 8 billion people on the planet. To think that there's just one person for you is I don't know. It's just it makes it puts a lot of pressure on what is quite an ironically or paradoxically quite an impersonal thing. Because, like, for example, another idea about love is that it's quite personal, when in some ways it's not. I think I was mentioning this thing I'd heard Sadhguru say, which I thought was brilliant. He was talking about his mother when he was, I don't know, 4 or 5 or 6 or something, and his mother communicating to him that she loved him. And I mean, he sounded like a little brat because what he said, and I mean, okay, he's an enlightened brat, but still, he said to his mother, "Oh, well, what about the kid down the street, 3 houses down? How come you don't love him the same way? And if I'd been born 3, houses down, would you love me in the same way?" Which, I mean, sure, must have short circuited his mother. I think he said she ran away and then came back a couple of, hours later, and she got what he meant. And it is a profound thing to say. But I think what he's like pointing towards is that, that impersonal love, but we make it personal, which kind of gets into the attachment thing. And it's, I think as humans, it is very hard to love somebody and not get attached to them. And I think to think that you shouldn't be attached, or that it's a failing in some way, or what did they say? If we're attached, is it really love? That you'll be putting a lot of pressure on yourself and the love, even though love is kind of like mercury. It doesn't really matter how much pressure you put on it. It doesn't change. But like if you think of like the highest form of, or the highest expression of love is to love somebody so much that you just want the best for them. Now, if that means that you know in your heart they meet somebody else and you can tell that they're going to be happier with that person, or that they have to go and be with that person, that you are honestly happy for them to do that, and that you are completely selfless and you just let the love flow through you, yes, you want to go and start an orphanage in that country, yes, go ahead. Or you want to, be a singer, yes, great, I will support you to do that. Or you want to go and be on your own for the rest of your life. And if you know it's like in your heart, yeah, that's the thing that they genuinely want to do, that you let them go and do that, that you don't kind of hang on to them, or, you don't let the attachment, get in the way. But that's not to say that you don't expect yourself not to be attached. That if they, if you know in your heart that they will be happier with that other person, that you're not going to be heartbroken about that. So it's a paradox, it's like on the one hand, you're letting them go, and you're letting them go joyfully, if you know what I mean, or with joy in your heart, or with love in your heart for them. But then you're also heartbroken, because the part that is that it makes you heartbroken is the attachment. And it doesn't matter whether it's your child or your parent or your partner, you're going to get attached to them. that's kind of part of the deal of being human. And often you'll see people try and protect themselves from the risk of being heartbroken by, no, that's it. I'm an island. I'm not going to, I'm not going to get close to anybody, because then then it won't hurt, But it's not like you embrace, you masochistically seek out being hurt. That'd be awful. But you have to understand that if you're going to love somebody, you're taking the risk of being hurt, and that it may hurt, and that's okay. Doesn't mean you're not evolved or lesser spiritual person or anything like that. It's just part of the deal, and it runs in parallel with the love continues. Like, I know for myself, when I think about all the I'll just take the women, because it's different for family and children and all that kind of thing. But if I just take if I think back to, it's not like I had loads of relationships in my life, but if I think back to all the different women that I've been with and I've been in love with, when I sort of separate out the personalities of each different person and I just feel into the love, it's the same. It's not, I had a special love for that person when it's very different from the love I felt for that other woman. And it's very different from that, no, it's not. The personalities were all different for sure. But the love that was inside me was the same. Because that's the other thing is all these things like only happen inside. Like if I love somebody, I don't feel it in their body. I only feel it here, which is another indirect ad for meditation. Because the more you meditate, the more you sort of are familiar with your inner landscape. But it's good to remind yourself about where you feel love, because part of the attachment is we sort of feel like, oh, if the person's not here, it's not the same, I want to go to this restaurant, but I want them to come with me, because it's not going to be the same if they're not with me, that's kind of attachment in action. So it's kind of good to, as a sort of spiritual practice, I suppose, or a way of becoming more conscious, is to meditate on, the most beautiful feeling you ever had of love. You think about that. Think back to whatever time when I met that person and it was so fantastic, and I just smiling at everybody, and just the colors were more vivid. It was all fantastic. The thing is that all of that happened inside you. And really all that happened was that person triggered it. It's like whatever configuration they had, physically, energetically, all that stuff triggered this inside you. And then it kind of naturally follows that, well, it all happened inside me, so it's all in there. So it's possible to feel that, for me to be able to trigger that myself. Now, You may not be able to, you may not know where the trigger is or how to do it. But it's sort of helpful to see it in that kind of context. So, getting back to the person's question, just let me remind myself, is it possible to love somebody without getting attached to them? I don't think so. But that doesn't invalidate the love. The two can exist at the same time, as I say. So the most extreme example is letting them go. That's the purest expression of the love coming through you, and being heartbroken at the same time, which is the attachment, the price of attachment. The good thing is, though, it all disappears every night. All this sort of attachment and all this kind of thing, it all just disappears every night. So all the things that we think are so, doesn't matter how heartbroken you are, when you go into sleep and you finish dreaming your heartbroken dreams, you drop off into deep dreamless sleep, it's all gone. The heartache goes. And that's, I find that very comforting. I mean, sure, you wake up in the morning. I mean, you may wake up, you may start having heartbroken dreams, and then you may wake, as you sort of have that moment where you're sort of putting yourself together, you're like, it doesn't always happen, but your eyes are open and you're looking at the ceiling and you're like, very quickly you're going, who am I? What's happened here? Oh yeah, I'm this person. I've got this, and I'm heartbroken. And then off you go for the rest of the day with the heartbroken. But same again. The following night, it'll all disappear again. So it's comforting to know that it all disappears. But the love in that impersonal way seems to go on. It's like, as I say, it's mercury. You can't compress it. You can't change it. It just is. And it's impersonal. When you really get into it, it is very impersonal. It's very beautiful. It's paradoxically, it's very personal because it's coming through me, but it's also very impersonal. Right, now, are there any questions about any of that?
I kind of have a question relating to this. In that kind of, it's impersonal and it's personal at the same time, do you think, like, especially in your work, do you think that people, like, in terms of bringing certain characteristics or states out in other people, like, say in certain instances, you could be in love with someone, but you bring out a feeling in them of like unavailability or either impulsiveness, which they later regret, or something like this? Do you think that's like how, like, you can sometimes, I guess, sense that, or you, like, not to avoid the painful instance, but how to kind of intuit how two people energetically combine? Because it's like a chemical reaction. It's something different. You come into it and it's the two of you react to create something that's new or different between the two of you almost.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like, again,
question, I know.
well, there's just different levels to it, really. And when the Hollywood version of love is like the goal, they live happily ever after. You know that idea? Whereas really what happens is, and now the work begins. That's the way the fairy tale should end. Not they lived happily ever after. It's like, now the work begins. Now we go deeper into love together. Okay. And to do that, we sort of help each other discover the briars and the brambles and all the unconsciousness inside each other that are covering over the love. Or we help each other with our individual process of purifying and refining the unconsciousness that we have taken on to deal with in our life. That's, in my experience, what is really happening. And when you view it in that perspective, then all the different permutations of, I have this set of childhood issues and you have that set of childhood issues, and they you know, my things that you do trigger me, and the things that I do trigger you, and yet the love is at the background, kind of driving it forward. So whether you're together for, you know, a couple of hours or 50 years, it's still the same process, you know, and you could view everybody really in your life in that way, because it kind of comes down to, is everything random and meaningless, or is it significant? You know, if everything is, it's either one or the other. I can't really see how there's a middle ground. You know, it's like, it couldn't be a case of, yes, 50% of the things are significant and the rest is meaningless. You know, I don't see how that could be. It's either everything is random and has no meaning, or everything is significant. Okay. So, I, I don't know which is. I don't think anybody does really. And you could spend a lot of time trying to prove it, but I think that would, personally, I think that would be wasted time, because you're not going to arrive at a definite answer. So for me, I just choose to think that everything is significant, and I kind of make that caveat because people who kind of go, "Oh no, what is it? What's the thing?" There's loads of bumper stickers with the, you know, nothing happens by accident, everything happens for a reason. You know, people trot that stuff out all the time, as if it's real, which it is. Maybe it is for them, but for me, like, I have to be, you know, even-handed about it. It's like, yeah, I could be just kidding myself here. It could be all random, you know. But what I do know about is that the only thing I have control over is how I feel on the inside. And even then, I don't have a huge amount of control over it, because, you know, if I'm triggered, it can be very hard to, you know, get back to equilibrium. But I know that if like many years ago, I had a friend, and I think I was like 18 or 19 or something. And this friend it was a guy I worked with, and he was much older than me. He was really old, so he was probably in his 20s. And we were talking about something, and something came up about selfishness, and he kind of went, yeah, but sure, everything everyone does is selfish. Like, everyone's selfish. Every motive that a person has is selfish. And this was a shocking concept to me. I was like, no, it's not true. That's not true. And I argued it like as best I could. And of course, for everything I said, he had an answer. Because you can prove that everything is, you know, selfish, or that it's motivated by self. I was dragging out Mother Teresa, Jesus, anyone I could think of, right? And still he had you know, no, she did this because of that. I couldn't get the better of him. I went home and I was like really upset, you know, because it was such a bleak perspective on humanity. And my heart was like going, he's wrong. I can't prove it, but I know he's wrong. And yeah, I came in the next day and I said, yeah, you're right. You know, you're right. You can prove it, but you're also wrong. Now, I'm just not going to, I'm not going to live my life thinking everyone is selfish. Okay. And it's the same, you know, everything could be meaningless. But if, when I think about living my life like that, it just feels awful inside. Okay. And, you know, there's no proof one way or the other. So I just choose to believe that everything's meaningful and everything's significant, because then my life is this fantastic, magical, wonderful thing that I'm engaged with, you know, and everything is significant because it's not, you know, partial. Everything, you know, is significant. I mean, then it's brilliant. Then it's like, yeah, great. Wake up in the morning. What's going to happen today? Because it's all means something to me. It's the John show. It's great, you know. Whereas it's like, oh no, I'm just a collection of atoms, and yeah,
Pure
I'm just
matter.
gonna, yeah, I'm just going to amuse myself until it's all over. That's like the opposite take on it. You know, nothing has any meaning. You know, it doesn't. So anyway, so from that perspective of everything is significant, then it's like everything that comes into my life, everything that I draw, everything that comes into my life, I have drawn this to me for whatever reason, and it's all meaningful and significant to me. Then who I share my life with, or who I am in relationship with, like on the wider kind of relationship, but then intimate, close, personal relationship, that's a different thing again. That's you know, I mean, there's degrees of people that are close to you, but you know, your partner, the person you're like sharing up close and personal space with, your life with, or you know, they're your significant other, then that's like that's where it's most intense. That's where that whole thing of drawing everyone, that's where it's most intense. And that's where the most of the opportunity is to process and refine your unconsciousness, and to get glimpses of that profound love, you know, the impersonal love. You know, I've seen myself do things that I wouldn't have thought possible, you know, by allowing that kind of love to come through more and more and more. But you know, that's great. But most of the time, you know, it's being triggered and going, wow, why am I being triggered? Why is that person like triggering me so badly? You know, and it's to do with, it is kind of part of to do with the attachment, because one of the things we do when we, you know, are with somebody is we make ourselves vulnerable to them. It's like we give them the nuclear codes, you know, here's the here's where all the triggers are, dear, you know, and they give you theirs. And you know, particularly the more time you are together, and if you sleep in the same bed, you know, that goes on at night, you know, the interchange. Like I can remember training with a guy who did iron shirt qigong, I think was what he called it. I think he was saying he used to do martial arts competitions, you know, like karate, I think it was. And he was saying he'd come back from the competition, and he, you know, from say the weekend, and he'd have like a really sore left knee, and his lower back would be sore, and maybe his right shoulder would be sore as well. And he'd get into bed, and you know, with his wife, and they'd say night night, and he'd go to sleep, and he'd wake up in the morning, he'd feel fantastic. And his wife would wake up and she'd have a sore left knee, and her lower back would be a bit sore, and her shoulder would be, you know, sore. And it's a very, I was, that little, him telling me that story always stuck with me, because he was kind of, from, you know, aware of the energetics that go on. So there's a lot of interchange that goes on when you're just lying beside somebody. And a lot of it can be to do with, you know, all your issues and connections and attachment issues and whatnot. They can all interchange as well. That's how, you know, a person can just seem to have this uncanny ability to trigger you in a way that nobody else can. And you could kind of get Hollywood about it and go, this isn't working out. He's not the one. She's not the one. That's it. You know, we're not incompatible. Or you can view it from another perspective, where you're going, okay, this is a chance for me to refine more of my unconsciousness. This person is helping me, you know. And that's just, I will add a caveat, of course, that if it's abusive, and it's can be very hard to, I mean, if it's physically abusive, that's easy to spot, obviously. And you know, no one should stay in that kind of relationship. But emotional abuse is harder to see. And it may be part of what you're working out about yourself, but generally, yeah, you know, that's not good either. That's, you know, you don't suffer unnecessarily. There's a difference between that and taking advantage of the opportunity to process your unconsciousness. Now, did I get anywhere close to answering that?
It was a good elaboration, yes. something you were talking about in terms of choosing to see everything as having significance. How do you interpret dreams, the dreams that you have at night?
Yeah, sorry, did I cut you off?
No, I just said dreams at night because you can dream while awake as well. But
Yeah. Yeah, dreams are great. I generally like, I think dreams can be really significant, and they're like not to be dismissed for sure. But then by the same token, not every dream is significant, meaning you're not trying to, like, dreams are often a kind of a way of you're trying to get your attention about, I'm trying to get my attention about something. So if I wake up and I've had a very vivid dream and I wake up going, that was significant, because I nearly always do. Like the ones that are significant, I'll be like, wow, that was, whoa, what is, and generally, like, particularly, from treating people, people come in and they tell me a dream and then they kind of go, so what did that mean? And I nearly always go, well, what do you think it means? Because, I know a bit about dreams. I know about dream symbology and that kind of thing, but that doesn't matter. Like, because what matters is what you think, you know? And generally, it's so funny. Like people come in, they'll tell me the dream, then they'll go, what do you think? And I'll go, well, what do you think? And then they'll tell me what it means. And they know, everybody knows. We know what our dreams mean. But I know, like, say, Carl Jung, I remember reading one of his books, and somebody asked, told him a dream, and he gave them this fantastic diagnosis of a tumor they had on the base of their brain. I haven't a clue how he got it out of the dream, but he did. So, some people can do that. Like he obviously had a facility for that, and he really got into it. And but for me, just, I suppose it's a rule of thumb. It's like the ones that are important, I remember. And then when that happens, then I'll take the time to kind of go, okay, so what does that mean to me? What am I trying to tell myself here? What am I trying to get my attention about? And then the rest are just fun, they're just like chewing gum for my mind, because I kind of think of them more in terms of in the process of going into the mystery, of whereas, the deep dreamless sleep, I'm much more interested in that. But as I get closer to that, things get more real. So dreams in a way are more real than this, which is a crazy thing to say. But one of the ways I know that is that, I can remember all the things incidents in my life where I've been afraid. And I have never been as afraid out here as I've been in dreams. There's something much more intense about fear in a dream. And that's a kind of negative spin on it, but it's to do with the kind of descent into, like up here is thoughts. So I close my eyes and I'm thinking turns into dreaming, and then dreaming turns into very impersonal dreaming. And I kind of go through the psychic realm, and then I drop out the bottom into the mystery, which is the most real. Okay. But, once I close my eyes and I start dropping down, everything gets more and more real, because, the mystery or the deep dreamless sleep that I go into, that's the most real, So yeah, I think they're important, not to be diminished, but yeah, unless it's your thing, unless you've got a real, like Carl Jung, you've got a real thing for dreams, and, that you can work out a lot of stuff through them. But just for myself, it's just, the ones that are important, I remember. And I nearly always know what they mean if I just get over the, what did that mean bit? Because that's the first reaction, because my mind will be like, what was that about? That was so crazy, because my mind is, higher up. It's higher up. So it thinks that what happened in the dream is crazy. It made a lot of sense in the dream, but then as my, come up to here, I'm awake again, then my mind is looking back down there, and it doesn't, like, don't take this personally. I'm talking about myself here, but this is the least conscious part of me talking to you right now. You know, because it's the surface, you know, it's the bit that, you know, has to put up with everything and, you know, deal with all the consequences. But the deeper I got back into myself, that's much more conscious back there. That's where my intuition comes from. That's where all the good stuff comes from, you know. I mean, all going well, it's kind of communicating pretty well now. It's managing to make it out through my mouth, all right. But, you know, for me, for this part of me to try and make sense of back there is very hard. So for this part of me to look at a dream and kind of go, what was that about? You know, I know my initial reaction is going to be what? And then when I settle down, it sort of percolates through. Oh yeah, right, okay.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. I will quickly answer this one. Okay, so this person says, I'm not sure if I can explain this correctly. I'm torn. On the one hand, everything's falling apart, but I have a feeling that everything is great. What's going on? Another simple question. Well, okay. I've tried, you know, it's just come in. So I'm trying, mostly going on intuition here, what they're picking up on. But it is that thing of like, it's a similar again, like paradoxes. I mean, I think one of the things that's very helpful in the spiritual life is to embrace paradox. Like the more you can embrace paradox, it's very good for your emotional health as well. You know, that, what do they call it? Emotional IQ, emotional quotient, you know, that thing. One of the things of that emotional intelligence is being able to hold two opposing things simultaneously and not have your head explode. So yeah, you could think of it as growth. I suppose that's probably the easiest way to think of it, is that we collectively, we're going through a huge growth spurt, you could say. Like if you just think of what's happened in 1 year, like this year, you know, it's remarkable. And so many different things have happened and so many things have changed, and very unnerving, very disturbing, very scary for a lot of people. And, you know, like the number of memes of like the world is burning that I've seen, it's hilarious. And it's like, I look out the window and go, oh, okay, well, it's not burning outside, you know, where I can see anyway. And I know they're you know, they're talking about climate change, and yeah, that is happening. I'm not diminishing that or denying it or anything like that. But they're not talking, they're sort of talking about that, but they're also kind of talking about like all the structures are falling apart, you know, and that is happening as well. And you kind of think, oh, well, that's terrible. Like all these awful things are happening because all these beautiful structures are falling apart. But generally, as I observe it, anything that's falling apart is false. It's pretty much false things that are falling apart. They might look false on the surface, but certainly behind the scenes, they feel false. And the things that are real and are not false, they're actually, you know, been getting a bit more space. So yeah, there's all the fear and all that kind of stuff, but people are being very nice to each other as well. You know, people are kind of going, oh, why am I stuck in this marriage? What am I doing here? What am I doing with my life, you know? Or, God, why have I not spent more time with my kids? You know, that kind of thing. Like they're just lots of, you know, it's like generally negative things really catch our attention because we're just wired for safety. You know, our nervous system is wired to keep us safe. And our minds, a big part of our mind is wired to look for problems way on the horizon so that we can run away from them. But we're like these little, so negative stuff is very dramatic and it really gets our attention. But the beautiful things that are kind of coming to the surface, they're not dramatic. They're very ordinary. Like, Jesus, my kids are beautiful. Why haven't I? What is wrong with me? Why am I spending all that time in that job, going to the job? And I can do the job from here. I realize, I don't have to commute, this kind of thing. But like the job thing is a technical thing, but just wow, look how beautiful my little girl is, or look how beautiful my little baby is, or look how beautiful my wife is, or my husband is, or that tree outside the house. I never really noticed it before. Now, that might seem like an insignificant thing, but to me, that's real. That's very real compared to the stuff that's falling apart, that is false. So it's very understandable to have, particularly if you look at the news, because the news is all negative. Like it's it's designed to be like, they've tried it a few times to have like positive news channels. They never last, because we're just not wired to pay attention to that stuff, whereas, this new disaster, we're like, what? I need to know about that. I definitely need to know about the new disaster. So you can, it's hard to avoid the news completely. So, but even if so any kind of interaction with it you have, it's going to be like, oh no, everything is terrible and things are awful. So you can, one part of you will be going, oh, I think something terrible is happening. And then another part of you is going, oh, I feel different. I feel, I've got, concerned about the future in a way that I haven't been before. And there are things on my mind, but I'm really, I'm enjoying this time with my kids, or time with my family, or time with myself, or time with my knitting, or time with my whatever. And God, I'll have to go back to work now. So yeah, I think if you can embrace paradox, things will be easy. That you can be afraid and think the world is falling apart, and you can kind of think, hey, I think everything's getting better at the same time. The two can exist at the same time. And that can apply to lots of different things as well. The more you can embrace paradox, the more you will, in my experience, be in tune with life, because life is full of paradoxes. And it will make your transition or your journey or how you travel through the world, it'll help you be lighter. I read out this poem. Let's see if I can find it. Aldous Huxley's poem. Yeah. And it's really appropriate, so I'll read it again. When did he write it? It doesn't say when he wrote it. Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley. Hard to pronounce. He's the guy who wrote Brave New World, which is on the telly at the moment. I haven't seen it, but I've read it. But yeah. Anyway, this is the poem. It's an extract from it. It says, it's dark because you're trying too hard. Lightly, child, lightly. Learn to do everything lightly. Yes, feel lightly even though you're feeling deeply. Just lightly let things happen and lightly cope with them. So throw away your baggage and go forward. There are quicksands all around you, sucking at your feet, trying to suck you down into fear and self-pity and despair. That's why you must walk so lightly. Lightly, my darling. So Aldous, he knew a thing or two about how to move in the world. Okay. All right. So any questions on that before we wrap up? No? All right. Okay. Well, thanks very much for coming along to the Zoom group, and see you next week for some more.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Very interesting. Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.